company dedicated to enhancing leaders' ability to harness and optimize trust as a strategic business asset.
Trust is not what we think it is, and it's much more important than we ever imagine.
Really, really, really. Wow. That's a bold statement, but I look forward to unpacking that. So, not what we think it is. I'm super curious about that. More important than we ever imagine. I see it day and day that it is becoming the differentiator from companies and teams thriving. So, let's start with a definition from an
Absolutely. You always want to start with the definition, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
academically. I mean, I could define it from what I see, but what do you say from an academic standpoint?
Yeah. If you don't define something, you can't measure it, right?
Mm.
So, yeah, definition of trust. It's our psychological state of willful vulnerability to the influence of another entity, motivated by our positive expectations being met. It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful, but I love your statement of if you don't define something, you can't measure it. So I think it's super important that we have a definition and we define this. Could we shorten it a little bit? Would it be safe to say it's willful vulnerability that's motivated by positive expectation? Is that
I would say yes, absolutely. That works. And whatever keeps it in people's minds, right? Whatever makes it memorable, willful vulnerability, motivated by positive expectations. That works
yeah,
very well. Yeah.
yeah. So is this telling us that this isn't really a behavior? This is just more of a choice? Willful vulnerability. This means we're having to choose.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, free will is one of those philosophical things that is heavily debated and very interesting and can get deep very quickly. But yeah, humans have choices, right? We have choices. We make thousands of choices in a day. So it's absolutely trust requires a choice that's not coerced. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Fascinating. I guess all the research that we've seen now on the neuroscience, we know trust has always been important and it's been a lubricant between people, oxytocin. But the idea that, the way our brain works of, making choices and we're constantly in that fight or flight mode. And so when we perceive something, right, our brain decides, is it trustworthy or not? And do we need to flee from this or fight in order to survive? Is that kind of the willful vulnerability and that you're speaking of in the free choice?
yeah, I mean, we have choice to make, but how free are we to make our choices? We're always limited. We're always bounded in our choice making, right? But this is all choices are happening in our heads, right? It's in the mind. This is not the behavior, it's in our mind where our choices are formed. And so it's complex. There's right chemicals, hormones, there's a lot going on there, but we have thoughts, we have feelings and emotions. All these come together to form our choices.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And you say it's motivated by positive expectations. Are those expectations, those could differ from one person versus another. Is that right?
They can. There are some basic universals about humans that are positive, right? We want to live generally, and we
Hmm.
want to be fed and watered, right?
Our
Some
basic
very
needs.
basic things, right? But positive, right? In our minds, we perceive it's perception. It's we perceive something to be positive. We can't prove it because it's in the future and we're not full control of it, but we perceive that something will be positive if we trust it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
So sometimes people are more prone to trust things right up front versus others a little bit more reserved in giving their trust. Is
Mhm.
that a function of that willful vulnerability? They're just not willing to put that trust out there?
Yeah, imagine if you lived a life where your trust was violated for your formative years.
Hmm.
How much would you have the initial trust in others, in anyone, even besides very specific people who remind you of people who violated your trust?
Hmm.
So our formative years obviously matter. Our genes even matter, right? And so there's a lot that goes into trust and choice making.
Wow, so much to
Mhm.
unpack.
Yeah.
This is exciting. I think, the takeaway for me is, this is in our mind and it's a perceived free will choice. So we can recognize this. We might be able to change this. But so much good stuff to unpack for those who trust naturally and those who may want to trust more because they don't naturally trust.
Absolutely. Yeah. We want our viewers and listeners to also engage deeply on this definition. It's okay to disagree. It's okay to push back. It's okay to ask questions. And that we freely invite you to do that because we trust you, right? We trust you to engage in this conversation, and we're excited for you to do so.